Hi guys, and welcome to my review for the BQEYZ Frost. This is the latest in the weather series from BQEYZ. A two driver IM, dynamic driver, and a microplaner. But anyway, before I get started with the Frost, I just want to give a little bit of a let's say background story. BQEYZ is a brand that I have had always a soft spot for. I gel with their sound. I just like the way they do things, much like I like the sound from ISN, like I like the sound from Penon. There are certain brands that I just have an affinity for, and BQEYZ is one of those such brands. And the truth is, every single product, some I do prefer more than the others, but every single product always ticks the right boxes for me. And the right boxes are to have an organic sound, to have an engaging sound that brings a sense of high level musicality. They have very interesting implementations always. They started out, well, they didn't start out, but the autumn of the weather series was the first, let's put it that way, of this sequence that I'm trying to explain to you. It is an all metal shell, like most of BQEYZ stuff is, priced at around the $200 price bracket. I've seen it lower, I've seen it a little bit more expensive, but at HIFIGO I've seen this at around 185, if I'm not mistaken. All metal shell. And the interesting thing about this IM is, if you notice here carefully, the nozzle, you see that gold nozzle there, that gold nozzle is exchangeable, and by exchanging that gold nozzle you can then change the bass profile of the autumn, and then how it interacts then with the mids and upper mids and the treble. 13mm driver, so a nice big driver. And the sound of the autumn, especially with the standard gold nozzle, which is the one that's got there, or golden vent rather, or with the bass vent, it's just up my alley in terms of the bass that it can give, that nice thumping authoritative bass. Yes, it maybe doesn't have that balance struck with the mids and the upper mids and the treble as nicely done. Although yes, if you do put the vent that does detract away quite a bit of bass, it does balance things out more and does become more engaging. But overall, the sound of the autumn is a warmer sound. It's an organic, old school type of sound. Like I've sometimes said many times, before, it reminds me of those great big 70s speakers that had those big 15-inch drivers and 18-inch drivers being used for bass and for sub bass. Well, more bass than anything else, really. And that's what the autumn reminds me of. It's got that big sound, big cubic inches, and it sounds the part. Anyway, they afterwards launched the also part of the weather series, the winter, which was the last one actually of that series. We had the original winter here, okay, and then we had a version which was a collaboration with Angel Ears, which was the winter ultra. And although it was marketed as having a slightly different tuning, a slight adjustment to the upper mids and the treble, with the two units that I have here, I have to say that they sound almost identical. Graphically, even the difference is, it's not a difference that makes sense. I mean, the Ultra is just slightly lower in that upper mid treble area, but it's so small that honestly I can't see the difference. But anyway, the winter here was a departure. Well, not a departure, but it was the first time they decided to, okay, let's try something novel for a single DD. Let's try something that hasn't been seen too many times. And so they took a 12mm driver, which is what we have inside here, and they coupled a 11.6 PZT bone conduction driver, so piezoelectric PZT driver, onto it. It's attached to the actual dynamic driver, and what that went and do was give it a little bit more sparkle up top. And yes, you do notice that up top, in terms of details, there's a little bit, well, compared to the Autumn, there's a substantial improvement, but compared to other models which have subsequently come out and to the rest of the models, yes, you do notice that there is that extra energy in the upper mids and treble, and it's done in a PZT manner, if that makes any sense what I'm trying to say. And what I'm trying to say is, if you have, you know, the upper frequencies being done by a dynamic driver, you have a certain timbre and a certain tonality. If you have a BA doing it, you're going to have again a certain timbre and a certain tonality. A PZT will convey the same thing, a microplanar the same thing. So every additional driver, or the addition of a driver that will handle those upper frequencies, does bring to it its own signature. And then it's a question of how well that driver has been implemented. I mean, obviously PZTs or piezoelectric drivers have not really gotten too much love because of the way that they are many times implemented, which is not the ideal, and so it can, you know, kind of be at lower volumes interesting, but the moment you push the volumes up a little bit, it just tries to murder you. With the case of BQEYZ, no, they've been using that sort of driver for quite a while, so I would say that they have mastered the knowledge, they have mastered the ability to tune it properly. And when you listen here to the Winter, that's the reality. It's got a very well rounded sound. How can I explain this? In terms of bass performance, yes, it's not as authoritative as it is in the Autumn, but the balance that's struck between the bass, the mids, the upper mids, and the treble is so well done that you never really notice that there's any lacking of anything of that, or that there is any shortage of information in any part of the frequency range. Like I said, the focus here, in my opinion, as compared to the Autumn, has been to open up the mids, the vocals, and that's very noticeable in instruments. But you know, there are cymbals, that kind of stuff, but there are occasions where you will notice, I'm not going to say that it's not well done or that it's not correct. It all depends basically on how you're able to fit the IM ultimately, and it also depends on what is the sort of sound that you ultimately like, because I mean, it might not be audiophile correct or 100% correct what the instrument should be sounding like, but if it sounds good to you, well, for me, I'm fine with that, okay? But for those purists, I suppose that there will be occasions that this can come across by having a sound which isn't truly correct. Like, for example, "Fly With Me" by Benny Chavez. You listen to the song right in the first few seconds of the song, and the way that that initial part of the song is being done, it's not that it's aggressive or not pleasant or anything of the sort, no. But you know, when I listen to it here on the Winter, and then I subsequently listen to it, let's say, on the Frost, the Frost does it in a better manner, in a more polished manner. Is it down to the fact that they are using a microplanar and that has inherently different qualities to it? Yes, that's true, but it's just been more coherently matched. It's just got a nicer overall presentation. You listen to it on the Cloud, and the same situation. On the Cloud, it's done just in a nicer manner, in a more elegant form. I would say is the best choice of words here. But anyway, you know, this is just an overview, and I'm letting myself now drag on. They then, well, like I said, they finished the season series, and they started with the weather series. The first of the weather series was the Wind, and the Wind used two drivers, two 10mm drivers this time around, a 10mm dynamic and a 10mm bone conduction. As you can see, it's there attached to the shell. Okay, and while the bone conduction PCT driver on the Winter was more focused on the upper frequencies, this is more focused on the lower frequencies, on the bass and on the mids, and you notice it again in certain songs. It's been a very well implemented, mind you, this bone conduction, so you don't notice it in a manner which takes away from the song or does it wrong. You just notice that there's that little extra cleanliness and sharpness to the bass and to the mids that, for example, when you're coming from something like the Cloud, or you go to something like the Cloud, you notice there's a difference. There's an extra sharpness here on the Wind. Other than that, the overall sound, again, very much a BQEYZ or house sound. Great bass. I would say the bass on the Wind is perhaps even superior to the bass on the Winter in terms of overall quality. That's just my personal opinion. Definitely more sharper. Definitely sharper. That's without a doubt. I believe they use a LCP driver in this case, as they do on the Cloud. And then the mids, upper mids and treble, again, very well executed. You don't notice on that particular song that I was saying of Benny Chavez, Fly With Me, that excessive is not the correct word, but that over energetic way of presenting those cymbals and those strikes. You still feel that it's maybe for those audiophile orientated people, it will be maybe just a little bit colored, less colored than in the Winter, definitely, but still a little bit less colored. For me personally, once again, I have absolutely no gripes. I think it's well done, because I can understand, and that's what I've said countless times. Depending on what is being used to implement a particular sound, as long as it's done well, I've got nothing against it. Yes, I do ultimately have my preferences, and yes, there is my preferences in these IEMs, or the ones that I will prefer more than others. But again, the bone conduction, and this is a true bone conduction here, has been very, very well implemented, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. End of story. Then came out the Cloud, and the Cloud, again, a 10mm dynamic driver with a 6.8 passive driver. And this passive driver is basically doing something very similar that we found in some of Lecture's IEMs, the DZ4 and also the S15, where that passive driver controls the output of the driver before it exits completely the nozzle. And what it does is it then that output is channeled into this dynamic driver, this passive dynamic driver, or this passive radiator rather, I think would be the best way of calling it. This passive radiator makes it vibrate, it resonates, and introduces cancelling waves of resonances that might occur from the main driver, and overall cleans up the sound and adds a little bit more extra, let's say, weight to the frequencies. This is exactly the same thing that happened with the SimGot, the Fermat. It's basically the same type of principle, or the same type of approach that they are trying to do here. It's an LCP driver once again. Very, very well implemented, and I would say that the Cloud, comparatively to the Wind and the Winter and the Autumn, is the first to have a sort of a bass presentation, which is a slight breakaway from the usual BQEYZ presentation. And what do I mean by that? It's a fuller bass. It's a little bit more. It's full-bodied, but not as incisive, not as clean. I'll explain. The bass on the Wind, we know it's clean, it's dynamic, it's got its right amount of weight. On the Winter, exactly the same situation, it's cleaner. On the Autumn, depending on what nozzle you use, it can be clean, dynamic, or it can be a little bit more bodied. But even when it's got that extra body, it's still a very start-stop kind of bass. Okay. Over here, the sensation that you sometimes get on the Cloud is, for lack of a better word, a little bit woolly, okay? But, again, this is me nitpicking, and this is me trying to ultimately find differences so that you can understand. It's still got very much that BQEYZ house sound for the majority of it, just that the bass is maybe not as sharp as it is, or it has been in the Winter and in the Wind. Okay, and then finally now the Frost. Uh, Packaging, the usual BQEYZ stuff, nice case, nice selection of tips. I'm actually using the stock tips because they work nicely, although I did try my BQEY, my BGVP 07s, and I did try my BGVP 07s, my BGVP whiteboards, and my KB Euro 7s. I did also try some Divinus Velvet, and ultimately, I like the stock tips. The stock tips actually work well. The only thing is with the stock tips is because they are a little bit on the softer side, they have a tendency of sometimes breaking seal. As for the IM itself, again, full metal body, very nicely built. It's got a beautiful faceplate. I mean, in that regards, BQEYZ always delivers. Excuse me. BQEYZ always delivers. You got beautifully designed IEMs that fit very well. The level of construction is always high, so you're holding it and you got a quality product in your hand. It doesn't feel cheap, it doesn't look cheap, it looks the part. The cable is also a nice cable. I've seen better previously, but it's fine. It's got this nice blue color which matches the blue accents as well on the faceplate. It works fine. I measured it, it was fine. I did try a different cable, but ultimately I just left it again with the Frost because it just didn't make really any significant difference to change the cable or anything. It would have been more for an aesthetic issue. As for the configuration, as I was saying, 10mm PU and PEK driver, so you could say not a fancy driver, okay, while we've seen some drivers here from BQEYZ which are what they call the PAR diaphragm, which it's a type of a LCP but a little bit more improved. We have seen LCPs as well. On this one they've used a more common driver or more common diaphragm approach, and they've coupled it to a microplanar. The microplanars, which is a style of the BAs, that's kind of style of microplanar, and it's nestled in the nozzle itself. Again, the way that everything has been integrated has been, in my opinion, flawless. And every one of them before, they always know how to match what they're using and extract the most out of it. And that's, I think, the beauty of a company that doesn't focus on releasing tons of products every year. They have it's a company that doesn't focus on releasing hundreds or dozens of IEMs a year. And why? Because every single one of their IEMs is subjected to a high level of R&D, so as to extract the maximum performance and to offer the best quality product, the best quality of price, performance, everything. And the drivers, be it a fancy diaphragm driver or be it a more modest diaphragm driver, the reality is BQEYZ always chooses proper drivers, and when ultimately that implementation is done, it's done correct, and that's what is the main thing. You can have a very fancy full beryllium driver or whatever, or a magnesium alloy driver, and if you don't know how to implement it properly, if you don't know how to tune it properly, it's going to sound like garbage. And BQEYZ, no, they know how to choose the drivers, they know how to choose the correct drivers, they know how to even in-house produce their own products when it's needed, which is the case of, for example, the bone conduction used here on the Wind is an in-house developed bone conduction, and in the Frost, that's what they've done. They've taken the bass driver, they've tuned it in a manner where the focus is slightly more on the mid bass, a little bit more on the mid bass, not a lot, a little bit more on the mid bass, with a slight roll off in the sub bass. That slight roll off doesn't in any way affect the ability of the Frost to go down low. I'd never found it had any issues with being able to rumble. And then it follows into the mids beautifully, no bleeding that in any way muddies things or makes vocals overly warm or overly husky or nothing. Everything just always very, very nicely done, a very well executed balance. The microplanar obviously focusing on the upper end, cleaning up the high frequency, giving it that detail, that ability to just make things sparkle in the right amount. Once again, the way that they've implemented the microplanar is not it's not too evident, it's not something that's too aggressive, like for example, well, aggressive again is a little bit of a harsh word, but if you guys remember the QEYZ, the Kanta, the implementation of the micro drivers there, for some people was just a little bit too much, so it gave loads of detail, yes, but depending on who you were and what your preferences were, it could come across as overly colored or overly energetic and ultimately fatiguing. Not the case here. The case here, the microplanar has been implemented flawlessly, and so the matching, the coherency with the dynamic driver is spotless. I mean, you don't notice that that the sound is coming from different drivers. It comes across as one single wave of sound, and that's the thing about BQEYZ that once again I think has to be given its deserved merit. My apologies, I seem to be in high demand today. So as I was saying, overall balance of bass, mids, upper mids and treble, in my opinion, is spot on. Nothing to be said there. When I now compare it with the other models, and that's where you start noticing the differences. With regards to like I was saying, to cymbal strikes and anything that's of that sort, you notice that the Frost, in my opinion, is the one that comes out ahead. I would say the Frost is the one that does it the best. The Cloud, the second place, and then in third place I would say the Wind and the Winter. The Autumn, it does it well if you are not a detail freak, if you are someone that doesn't want loads of detail, so it will do it well. Or how can I explain this? While maybe the Winter and the Wind can come across occasionally as being overly energetic, okay, overly done, so colored excessively, let's put it that way, the Autumn is the opposite way. It's maybe sometimes overly subdued, and the Frost, in my opinion, has struck then that perfect balance. In terms of overall bass performance, the cleanliness of the bass, I would say the two standout ones, the ones that overall have the best bass are the Frost and the Autumn. However, the Autumn's bass doesn't stand out as being as maybe hi-fi, if you want to put it that way, because of that extra cleanliness, that extra detail that we have here on the Frost, then makes the bass that little extra more polished, or a little bit more high definition, if you want to put it that way. But these two for me are the ones that have the best bass in terms of quality, and the main reason for the Autumn's bass being so good is because of the versatility that it has, by virtue of you being able to change those front vent filters. You can achieve the bass that you want, and that versatility then is what makes it be here. If I compare the bass with the other three, the Winter, the Wind and the Cloud, the Frost has got equal amount of cleanliness as you have here on the Winter or on the Wind. Definitely a little bit more dynamic than on the Cloud. The Cloud is the one that has a little bit more of a woolly kind of presentation to the bass. But what I like here about the Frost's bass is that it has, because it has that little bit of a mid-bass bump, it just makes things a smidge more engaging. I mean, this is minor differences, trust me. But, these minor differences do count, and if you want to, go to the last detail, yes, the bass here, I think, is the best here. In terms of the mids, I would say as well that the ones that have, or that, the best mids overall, in terms of male and female vocals, in terms of how the instruments comes across, their timbre, their tonality, I would say the Frost and the Wind are the two that have the best mids in terms of just mids by themselves. It's now a question of how you like that mid to be then matched to the bass and to the highs that you have, and that's where then I think the Frost slightly edges out the Wind more times than the other way around. Okay. The winter ever so slightly behind the wind. I mean, it's just very minute. The autumn, the issue is that it lacks a little bit of that detail up top that sometimes helps clean up the mids. The mids are very organic by themselves, yes, but they lack a little bit of detail that you have on the others. And the mids on the Cloud, very well executed, nothing to be said there. Or just the mids by themselves, yes, I would probably say these two after the Frost, yes, without a question. But then it's the way that they are integrated again, like I was saying about the Wind. It's the way that the mids are integrated with the highs and with the lows, and how everything then matches. Okay, highs, personally for me, the best highs, the Frost. I just think that the way that that microplaner has been implemented is faultless. Obviously, it has an advantage over something like the Cloud, because the Cloud has got a passive radiator helping in the bass, not in the highs. So the highs here, or just the highs the actual driver can do. In terms of the Wind, we have a similar situation. I mean, that bone conduction is focusing on the lower frequencies. In terms of the winter, the highs here are helped out by that PZT. So if I compare these two, because they have, let's say, an extra driver helping out in the highs, this is the better one without question. Without question, more elegant, more well executed, more detailed retrieval, everything more, but more polished above all. The biggest thing is that it's more polished, more elegant, more just more elegant. That's it. Comparing it with these two, comparing the highs there, since that it's a two driver setup and this is a single driver basically handling the whole frequency range. I mean, there's not a huge day and night difference. What you notice is the Frost is just that little extra, little bit more, just a little cleaner. That's it. Little bit more detail. Technically, I mean, it's again an area where BQEYZ always shines. You know, any one of them has great soundstage, great imaging, great detail retrieval. You know, timbre and tonalities is really good. Obviously, yes, the ones that have probably the best timbre and tonality, at least for my personal liking, I would say the Frost, the Autumn, and the Cloud, and then these two following that. Not huge difference, but that, you know, that's the reality. In terms of soundstage, I would say the Frost and Winter probably the best soundstage, and then these two, and then the Autumn. Imaging, I would probably say yes, the Frost and the Winter are the better ones. Detail retrieval, these two again, the better ones. So you know, the reality is this. It's not like I'm trying to tell you now, guys, go sell what you have in terms of BQEYZ, because the other BQEYZ models are that make no longer sense. No. It's like I said in the beginning, BQEYZ is a company that definitely knows what they're doing, definitely takes time to implement whatever idea they have in mind, be it a pure single DD where they try and extract the best performance out of it here, be it a dynamic driver with a PZT, you know, be it a dynamic driver with a true bone conduction, be it a dynamic driver with a passive radiator, or be it a dynamic driver with a planar. Every single one of them has their own little quirk, their own little strong point. You know, it's inevitable. Okay, it's then a question of how many boxes are being ticked by you based on what you prefer. Like I've said, I always like timbre and tonality. It's one of the things that I very much appreciate. Then, you know, overall build quality, the overall balance of sound from the bass into the treble. Is it well done? Do you see any areas which jump out when you know, does it scale properly? And ultimately, when you start taking those things all into consideration, the Frost is the one that ticks the most right boxes. I would say the differences are not huge. The difference between these four is really minor. It's just, like I was saying earlier, it's just how how do you like the sound to be more in the upper mids and treble? Ultimately, that's what will be the main detracting factor here. How do you like the sound in the upper mids and treble? Do you like it? Do you like the PZT presentation? Do you like the you know the presentation of a single driver being aided by a bone conduction? Although, like I said, the bone conduction here, it's focusing more on the lower frequencies, but everything always then kind of, there's always interferences. That's the reality. And the Frost for me just is the one that does it the nicest. It's just a very well tuned IEM. In terms of price as well, it's got a really competitive price, which is something that I think BQEYZ has been very smart in doing. They haven't been scaling their prices like some other brands have been doing. I mean, this is, like I said, around $185 for the Autumn. The Winter, when it came out, it was a little bit more expensive, around $195, $200. The Ultra was a little bit more above that. The Wind past that $200 barrier. I've seen it as high as $230, but you can, if you look around, you can find it at just around $200. So you can see that the prices have maintained themselves very much around the same kind of value. The Cloud, I've seen it as low as $150, so really competitive, really competitive. And the Frost and this particular unit, I got it directly from BQEYZ. It's around the $170, $180. So they've been able to, in my opinion, offer a continuous product, a product which is continuously high level in terms of build, product, because one is not substituting the other, they're just different takes. So they've maintained the high build quality, they've maintained the quality parts internally, so that, and it reflects itself in the sound, obviously. High level of accessories, and we haven't, as end consumers, had to pay the price for that increase in value. And that's that, guys. I'll show you now the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section here for the BQEYZ Frost. This is the graph of the Frost straight away. As you can see, the focus is a little bit more here on the mid bass. There's a very slight roll off. I mean, from the highest point, we're talking a drop of not even 2 dBs, a dB and a half. Let me see. Yeah, a dB, 1.6 dB drop, so 2 dBs drop if you want to just round it off. In terms of the bass gain, we are talking about a bass gain of roughly 5 dBs. We have a pinna gain peaking at, so 74 to 80, around 6.5 dBs, and that's it. I mean, you can't, at least in my opinion, you can't really falter this tuning. It's a really nice done tuning. Okay, you could say, oh, but it's got this dip here. Then, okay, well, first of all, let's keep in mind we have a couple of related introduction of measurement, which might not be 100% correct, but when you listen to it, you don't feel that there's any drop of anything of any sort. This drop also might as well be one of the reasons that you don't find any harshness, or you don't really hear any harshness. And then plenty of extension past 10K, so that microplaner definitely doing its work there, but in a very mild manner, or rather, let me choose a better word, in a very correct manner. So it's not overly excessive, it's not overly done, so it doesn't convey any harshness or anything of the sort. Anyway, let me show you here the Autumn. This is the Autumn, and as you can see, very similar in terms of the bass. Obviously the Autumn is a 13mm driver. This is the Autumn being used with its stock vent for the bass, so it does sound substantially more present than what the graph would say. In terms of the mids, yes, nicely done mids, no issue about that, but because of that energy you have here from the bass, it makes the mids sound just a little bit more warmer, a little bit darker, not as detailed, and definitely you don't have the same sort of detail, although graphically you wouldn't think that. You definitely don't have the same sort of detail as you have on the Frost. other than that, I mean, it's a very nice IEM. I still think that the Autumn is a phenomenal IEM, even by today's standards, and it's been out since, I think, 2022 now. So it's been a while, a long time by IEM standards. So that's the Autumn. The Winter, where's the Winter? The Winter, here's the Winter. Okay. Like I said, the implementation of that PZT driver is good. I can't say that it isn't good. In terms of the bass, very similar to the bass of the Frost, although the Frost then does give it just that little extra, little bit more cleanliness, dynamic kind of feel, maybe by virtue of the planar or the microplanar. And then this area here, although graphically you would never think it, it's got plenty of detail. I mean, that PZT is well implemented. It's just like I said in certain songs that it might be a little bit too much for some people. For me personally, and I want to make that perfectly clear, for me personally, I have no issues whatsoever. I think the Winter has been really well done, really well introduced. BQEYZ has mastered the implementation of PZT. So, and just for the sake of your comparison, this is the Ultra, the Winter Ultra. So as you can see, I don't consider this enough difference to be just, you know, to anyway, it is what it is. Okay, so that's that. Let's put here again the Frost. So we've seen the Winter, we've seen the Autumn. Let's see now the Wind. The Wind, yes, here we go. Wind, no. Winter, Cloud, Winter, where is the Winter? Winter, Wind. Wind? Where is the Wind? What the Wind? Wind. I need the Wind. Apologies, guys. I have to go and fetch it. I thought I had it here, but it's not. It's not what I. BQEYZ. There we go. Wind. There we go. Wind. That's it. There we go. My apologies. And now align it here. There we go. The Wind, as you can see, has got a lot of the same sort of tuning style overall that the Frost has. A little bit more sub focus, a little bit less mid bass focus. You can see here the bone conduction. The same sort of extension past there graphically, but when you listen to it, not so much. But ultimately, look, the differences is not significant. It's not huge. I just feel that the Wind is again suffering from a little bit the same issue as the Winter. It's just not as elegant, not as polished up top as the Frost is. Guys, trust me, not a huge difference. Not a huge difference. I'll just, for the sake of you guys understanding, I'll just quickly pop here the Winter so you guys can see the Winter. Okay, that's the Winter, the Wind, and the Frost all together. The Wind, you would say, is the most energetic in terms of upper mids and treble. Maybe in certain occasions that can come across that way, but that also brings with it a little bit less polish that you find on the Frost, and I just find the Frost to be a little bit more well executed in that department. Okay, so that's that. And now finally, let's go fetch here the Cloud. The Cloud is, I believe, this one exactly, number 5, the Cloud. The Cloud, as you can see, in terms of the bass, it's got an approach which is, let me just take away this one and put here, for example, the winter, so you guys can see what I'm trying to say. You would say that the approach of the bass in the Cloud is the same as previously being used, and graphically you'd come to that conclusion, yes. But when you audibly listen to it, no, the Cloud has got an approach which is more, let's say, what you see other brands using. Okay, it's still got, yes, that focus on the upper mids and the treble, which is very well done. It's just that by itself really good. I mean, if I compare the mids of the Wind and of the Frost, I wouldn't even say that there's this difference, honestly, and I wouldn't even say as well that there's this in terms of being real. Okay, it's just that the bass and the way that the bass then goes into the Cloud's mids and upper mids and treble is a little bit more woolly, a little bit slower, if you want to put it that point. And so it gives an overall tonality to the mids, upper mids and treble of the Cloud, which is just a little bit slower, a little bit more warmer. Nothing wrong with that. Phenomenal, sounds great, sounds fantastic. You know, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just trying to find a way of explaining the minor differences that you see between them. But the reality is that the Cloud is also a really well tuned IM. It plays really well. It doesn't, in my opinion, have this sort of extension that it shows here graphically. It doesn't. The Frost definitely does have a little bit more. But it's like I also said during the review, the differences between these IEMs, and we're going to exclude the Winter because the Winter is the only one that has only a single driver, while the others have got some sort of aid, some sort of an extra driver there helping out, even if it's a passive driver, which is the case of the Cloud. The difference isn't really big between them in terms of overall sound. It's more of a question of how this area here of the upper mids treble, an extension past 10K, let's say, is done, and how it's matched to what is coming from behind. And I personally feel that the Frost is the one that just does it the best. The Cloud does it really well, nothing wrong there. The Winter also does it good, although I think because of that issue of the PZT, maybe not as well as the Cloud, and the Wind does it also really good. I mean, nothing to be said there. I'm just going to quickly get here. The Wind as well also does that whole. And if you notice it, the Wind and the Frost, they have a very similar tuning, very similar tuning. One is using the bone conduction, one is using a passive radiator. Graphically, you would say that they would sound by about the same. And when you listen to them, and if you're just listening to EDM, or if you're listening to more, let's say, non-audiophile music, apologies for that, you won't pick up the difference. It's going to be hard to pick up the difference. Where you will pick up the difference is, like I was saying, is if you're listening to some new wave jazz, if you listen to some Dominic Ailes, if you're listening to, for lack of a better word, if you're listening to real music, that's where then you will see the slight nuances, because you will have all those instruments coming into play, and it's how those instruments come across that then will start differentiating how everything comes across. Never huge differences, because all of BQEYZ IEMs have got a really well executed tuning, and they have although they have their own little particular signature because of the implementation, they always sound good. But that's where you will see the differences. You will see the differences by listening to female vocals, and how one implementation, that female vocal might come across a little bit overly emphasized. Let me see. Carol Lubbock, for example, is one. Elephant from Carol Lubbock in particular is a song that you will pick up on that difference. Vanessa Fernandez as well is another song that you will pick up on those minor differences that these IEMs have. All right. Anyway, guys, I hope I was able to give and shed some light on the Frost. Definitely, my final take on it is it definitely is a solid IEM. I'm not going to call it a single DD because it's not. Definitely a solid IEM. The price point that it's at, yes, it's a competitive price point. You have countless other IEMs at the same value. So it depends whether you want the more simplistic approach, well done, which is the case with BQEYZ, or if you want something more elaborate, or hybrids, or a tribrid, or something more complicated. I mean, you have the P50 from EPZ, for example, multiple drivers, and also and so on and so forth. It just depends what is it that you're looking for. Because I'm very much a person of simplicity, and I like simple things that just work. Let's call it old school. I would say the Frost is a IM that should definitely be on your list of at least listening to it, okay, and then deciding whether or not it makes sense to have. As for BQEYZ, congratulations. That's all I can say. I always, whenever I hear they're going to be launching an IM, I always get excited, because I know that whatever is going to come out is going to be good. Even the BQ10, that cheap entry-level IM that they launched as well recently, fantastic IM. Definitely has all the right BQEYZ things in it, and it's good. It didn't go down the road of the more common tuning that the majority of the cheaper IMs are using. It sounds like it's older brothers, and it's good. It's a good IM. It's really something that it sets itself apart. Much like the iBass or the Gelato Junior as well, another IM that just does its thing its own way, and it does it well, and it sounds good. All right, guys, that's it. Take care, and don't forget to like and subscribe.